Every morning when I greet the sun, when I move forth through crowded ways, in my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. When I laugh, oh, and when I cry with pain, when my best friends misunderstand, in my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. Dear God, my God, I am Thine for eternity. Dear God, my God, I am Thine eternally. Though my path lead me over desert sands, though it take me through bitter storms, in my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. When I'm working and when in earned repose, let come victory or low defeat. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of Thee. Dear God, my God, I am Thine for eternity. Dear God, my God, I am Thine eternally.
Sing with us.
Dear God, my God, I am Thine for eternity. Dear God, my God, I am Thine eternally.
So I will begin by reading from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries from the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible, and they're written by Swami Kriyananda. And this is God present even there where there is ignorance? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, makes a reference to the divine light that is obscure to the rational faculty, but that enlightens our higher nature. The light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Reason recoils from this statement with innumerable questions. What is the darkness? Is it conscious that it should comprehend anything? What sort of light would be capable of shining in darkness without transforming at least that part of the darkness in which it shines into light? Does this light shine only at night? And if so, why only then? The solution is that to divine sight, even daylight seems darkness. The sun itself, like the moon, which shines only by reflected light from the sun, is but a kind of reflection of the cosmic light, which, being immaterial, is invisible to the eyes, but which is the great source of all material reality. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramhansa Yogananda describes his youthful visit to Ram Gopal Muzumdar, the sleepless saint, who lived in the vision of that hidden light. Around midnight, Yogananda wrote, Ram Gopal fell into silence, and I lay down on my blankets. Closing my eyes, I saw flashes of lightning. The vast space within me was a chamber of molten light. I opened my eyes and observed the same dazzling radiance. The room became a part of the infinite vault which I beheld with interior vision. Why don't you go to sleep? Sir, how can I sleep in the presence of lightning, blazing, whether my eyes are shut or open? Oh, you are blessed to have this experience. The spiritual radiations are not easily seen. The saint added a few words of affection. This is the light that shineth in darkness. It has been described variously in the great scriptures. In the Bhagavad Gita, the 11th chapter, the devotee Arjuna is given an experience of the infinite state and exclaims in awe, if there should rise suddenly within the skies sunburst of 1,000 suns, flooding earth with beams undeemed of, then might be that Holy One's majesty and radiance dreamed of. And thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. So is God present even there where there is ignorance? That's an interesting topic for today. I want to start with a story, and it's about a saint who is a very practical saint. And he's visited by this very wealthy man who shows great devotion to him. But the man shows devotion because at one time he was a great sinner. And for him, if he shows this much devotion, he feels then that those who have condemned him for his sins will look at him differently. So he comes to visit the saint one day, and he brings with him 2 servants. He's a very rich man. He's a very wealthy man. And as a matter of fact, the saint refers to him as the rich man. So he brings his 2 servants with him and his wife. And he demands actually that the saint give him some spiritual teaching. And the saint says, he said, I'm happy to give you spiritual teaching if you will follow what I tell you to do, this test that I'm going to give you, and you pass it. And the man said, as well as the servants, they all jumped up and down, and they said, of course, no problem, and we will pass it. And the saint said, very well. And he looked at the wife, and the wife stood there very humbly, and she had her head lowered, and she said, if God willing, I will return and pass it. And the saint then had this urge to go out into his banana grove. So he took a walk, and he picked up 8 bananas, and he brought them back, and he gave 2 to each of the servants, and then 2 to the husband and 2 to the wife. And he said, now what your test is that I want you to take these bananas, and you've got to go someplace where there's no one, there is complete seclusion, nothing can witness what you're doing. You must eat these bananas and then come back to me before evening sets in. And of course, the man ran off eagerly, and so did the 2 servants. And the man ran to a local friend's house, and he ran into the bathroom, and he shoved the bananas in his mouth, peel and all, and then he rushed back to the saint, and he said, I did it, Holy One, I did it. And that no one saw me. Absolutely no one could have seen me or witnessed what I did. And then after a while, the two servants came back, and they said, Holy One, we both went into the darkest caves you could ever find, and we ate the bananas, and we return now. in good time. And he looked at them, he said, and no one saw you? He said, no one saw us go in. It was so dark that we couldn't even see the bananas, and we ate them in the dark. I said, oh, okay, well, but no one saw you. No, we're sure of that. I said, okay. Well, then after a while, actually quite a long while, the woman came back, the wife of the holy man, the rich man, came back, head lowered, took her 2 bananas, placed them at the feet of the saint, and said, I'm sorry, but I failed. There was no place that I could go. No place. I went to the meadows. I went to where the wildflowers grow. I went down into the valley. I went up into the mountains. She had quite a busy day. I went up into the mountains. I went all over trying to find a place. I even went into the darkest caves in the mountains, trying to find a place where no one was watching me. I went into the meadow and I saw the grass waving back and forth, and there was a being in the grass nodding at me. And then I went to the flowers, to the wildflowers, and I saw in the wildflowers, in the petals, I saw a smile from some divine being smiling at me. And I went into the valleys, and there I saw breathing, as if it was breathing, the rocks that were going straight up, and they were as if it was a long neck, and it was breathing and looking at me. And then I even went into the darkest caves, and I felt this presence when I went in. And I seemed to hear someone laughing and saying, look, I'm the light which shineth even in the midst of the utmost darkness and in the gloom of mountain breasts. And I ignored this laughing voice, and yet I tried to eat the bananas, but the darkness shivered, and all of a sudden a ray of light came out and landed on my bananas, on the fruit. And I tried to ignore this light, not pay any attention to it, and then suddenly I saw all of my thoughts awakened in the dark temple of my mind, and they rebuked me, and they were saying, you think you can hide from us? We're made by the Divine Father, who's with you all the time. You cannot hide. There is no spot that he does not occupy. So, sir, I'm very sorry, but I failed your test. And the saint stopped, and he looked at her, and finally he spoke, and he turned to the 3 that were standing there, and he said, this is your Guru Preceptor. This is the one who you should listen to, because she has learned what I sent you out to learn. The test that I have given you, she has passed. And so whatever lesson she gives you, that will be the first lesson that I give you. So the darkness possesses consciousness, but it is incapable of comprehending the subtler realms of divine light. Just as divine love cannot be destroyed by hatred or jealousy, neither can divine joy be destroyed by aggression, or divine wisdom be complicated or misunderstood. Well, it can be misunderstood, but it cannot be miscommunicated, let's put it that way. But God's infinite resources that prevail all around us are ours for the taking. And we only have to go within. We only have to go into the silence into our meditation, to reach for it and to grab it. And once we understand, as this lady, as this wife understood, once we understand that God resides perfectly within each and every one of us, then we can begin to see him without. And the things that we have to have are devotion, which is extremely important on the spiritual path. But it's got to be a devotion that is it is selfless. It can have no expectation. It's like the rich man who was devoted only outwardly so that others could see it. You can have no expectation of your devotion when you offer it to God. And the ego must perfectly attune to the divine truth. So we always have got to be in mind of the fact that God is ever present. And as in this particular reading, the voices that she heard said there's no spot. There's no spot where God does not exist. All we have to do is tune into that and reach for that. And she understood this, and it was her receptivity and her humility and her selflessness. Because if we're trying to reach for divine love, something much greater than human love, we have to learn to be selfless. So as we go into this year, we're still at the brink of a new year, a year that seems to be, at this stage of the game, already a roller coaster. And as we go into it deeper, it's probably going to get even more up and down. Anytime we try to cling to what's outside of ourselves, we will feel pain, because everything is up and everything is down. And we're going to see it a lot this next year. And we don't stand up here, I don't think, as ministers pounding into everyone's head, meditate, meditate, meditate. I think we're actually pretty subtle about it, I hope. But if I could give you one piece of advice, we all have to step up our game now. And we all have to meditate more in this coming year. And if you're not a meditator now, you should learn how to meditate. Because that is what we need to do. We're going to need to go inward to center ourselves and to come into attunement with divine love, divine peace, divine joy. And that's where the answers will lie in this next year. And that's how you'll be able to progress forward with the attunement to divine truth. Because as these readings have said, God is everywhere. He's everywhere. And I know it's hard to comprehend, but he is. He's everywhere. And all he's doing is saying, we have to reach up to grab him, or to be lifted even further by his grace. So just keep that in mind. God is with us always, and he will continue to be with us always. As the chant this morning said, God alone is all we ever need.
Thank you, Devaki. Good morning, friends. As Devaki has wonderfully talked about and our reading says, the darkness is simply ignorant of the light's existence. It can't comprehend it. The Gita reading, it shows just how unimaginably brighter, greater, more amazing the divine is than we can possibly conceive. And so to be able to perceive that divine light, we have to raise our consciousness. We have to increase our awareness. And this is the great work of our lives. This is the journey of self-realization. And so what I want to focus on this morning is, How do we go about raising our consciousness and becoming more aware of that light so that we can see it in ourselves and in everyone around us? Maya is very strong because most of the time, face it, we're not aware of that light. And we have to consciously work at it. We can't just expect that, oh, one of these days I'm going to realize it. No, we have to apply ourselves. And there are many ways that we can go about doing that. Every Sunday, as part of the Festival of Light, we sing Swami Kriyananda's song, "Thy light within us shining." Meditate on those words. Thy light within us shining has shown where freedom lies, from earthly walls confining to soar in spirit skies. How oft like sheep we strayed apart, now guided by thy ray. In inner freedom of the heart, our night has turned to day. Yogananda encouraged his disciples to memorize his poem Samadhi and to repeat it every day. Why? To remind them of that state of consciousness. He said, repeat it daily. Visualize yourselves in that infinite state. Identify yourselves with it, for that alone is what you really are. That alone is what you and you and you and you and all of us really are. We just have to realize it, and we have to work at reminding ourselves and reminding each other of this every day. And that requires that we have to put out as many of you know, I'm a big Star Wars fan. And it's been a while since I've shared a Yoda quote here, so I'm going to do that. The Gospel according to Yoda. There's a wonderful scene in Star Wars where Yoda is teaching his disciple, his student, Luke Skywalker, and trying to get through his thick skull the nature of the universe. And he says to Luke, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Right? And Yogananda said something very similar to his disciples at Mount Washington. He said, I see you all as images of light. Everything, these trees, the bushes, the grass you are standing on, all are made of that light. You have no idea how beautiful everything is. We too can have that vision. So what tools do we have? Yes, meditation. Tuning out the sense telephones and tuning out this material world that we get so drawn into. We have the wonderful music that Master and Swami have given us to help remind us. Great affirmations. I've been working with an affirmation this past week that came to me in Sharmila's vision board workshop a week ago Saturday. Thank you, Sharmila. It's been a wonderful journey with that. Practicing the yamas and the niyamas, trying to avoid those attitudes that pull our energy and our consciousness down, and to practice those attitudes that help lift it up. And, we can even spiritualize the everyday to remind us. In October, Alan and I traveled to New York to visit his mom for her 96th birthday. And we took her and some of her friends out for lunch. And one of her friends gave her a little disco ball on a stand. And she put that ball in the window in her living room in her house. And in the afternoon, when the sunlight comes pouring through that window, it shoots hundreds of little pieces of light up on the ceiling. And it is so magical and so lovely. Thy light within us shining, and all around us shining. And it's also important to remember, anytime we err, because we're going to make mistakes, we're still in ignorance, right? We're not worthless schmucks. We're not losers. We're not terrible people. As nice Swami Asha frequently says, well, if I could have done better, I would have. And sometimes, after the fact, we think, oh, I should have known better. But, again, Maya delusion is so strong. And if we were fully self-realized, we wouldn't have done it. And we also wouldn't have wasted a bunch of time beating ourselves up for doing it. So why waste the time now? Instead, let's put that energy on reminding ourselves that we are beings of light, and we just have to keep working at raising our consciousness and identifying with that light. January is a customary time for New Year's resolutions, and we're still in the month of January, so it's not too late yet. I'm going to invite all of us this morning, if you haven't yet, make yourselves a spiritual resolution for the new year. What is it that you can do that's going to help you remember that you are this light? What kind of a practice can you incorporate to make it practical that you can carry forth as you go through this year? Because we have to continually put out energy on our spiritual path. And what that looks like is going to look different at different points of our journey. But as Swami Kriyananda said, we're either moving forward or backward. We're never standing still. And the forces of this world are just too strong, my friends, to pull us kind of out of our orbit and away from the spiritual life. So, what is it that inspires you on your spiritual path? What is it that reminds you of that light? And how can you work with that in this coming year? Take stock of where you are, no judgment, but just where am I? Where do I want to be heading? How can I align myself with that more and more in my life? And I want to end by just sharing some reflections and comments briefly. Tomorrow is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, observed. His birthday was the 15th. And on New Year's Day, Alan and I were flying back from the East Coast and saw a documentary that was released in 2018 about his life called I Am MLK Jr. And it was a really wonderful film. It traces Dr. King's life from the Montgomery bus boycotts in 1955 through his assassination in Memphis in 1968, and follows some of the major demonstrations and movements that he was involved in. There's a lot of video footage from those actual periods, and interviews and commentaries by people who were with him, particularly some noted civil rights leaders who were trained and mentored by Dr. King. And so it was fascinating to sort of hear what they were thinking at the time and how they were approaching some of the situations that they were in. And there are two things I took away from this film that I think are very relevant to our topic this morning. As many of us know, Dr. King studied Mahatma Gandhi's life and work and his use of the principle of ahimsa, of nonviolence. But what these people who were mentored by Dr. King said was Dr. King's movement was all about love. It was all about love. Because ahimsa is not just nonviolence, it's compassion. It's love in action. And what Dr. King was trying to do, they said, was he was trying to make his opponents better versions of themselves. He was trying to make his opponents better versions of themselves by giving them opportunities to rise and step up. Isn't that fascinating? Like, you don't hear that in the public discourse. And the other thing that I took away from this movie, they said Dr. King did more to create greater equality and freedom in this country in the span of 12 and a half years than had happened in the 100 years since the Emancipation Proclamation. He did things that people said just couldn't be done politically. And how did he do that? They said he did it because he was working with spiritual principles. He knew that his life and the entire movement were in God's hands. And what he was consciously trying to do was to tune in more and more to what was it that they were supposed to be doing and how to be in alignment with that, how to act dharmically. So, my friends, let's all tune into this light and around us as we go through this year. And I'm going to close with this affirmation from Yogananda that I'm going to invite you all to join me in. I am a spark from the infinite. I am not flesh and bones. I am light. I am a spark from the infinite. I am not flesh and bones. I am light. I am a spark from the infinite. I am not flesh and bones. I am light. And mentally only now, feel the reality of this in your own being. I am a spark from the infinite. I am not flesh and bones. I am light. May we all be one in that light someday.
The man that was Jesus had shown his pure form. Upon a high mountain he stood, transfigured, 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 transfigured in light, that his chosen might see that he was the Christ.
A hope of all hope, a joy of all joy. Toward thee we aspire, who believe in thy